Doctors of Reddit, what's it like when you go in for a doctor's appointment? Do you and your doctor discuss what's wrong with you like it's a group project? Do you not go at all because you're your own doctor? I was at a lecture a couple of years ago, performed by two doctors who'd undergone treatment for breast cancer and written a book about it together. I remember her talking about her diagnosis. She was a breast cancer surgeon herself, you couldn't make it up. She walked into the room, saw her own scans with the doctor and her heart dropped. She barely heard a word he said because she couldn't stop the flood of information she was getting. Looking at the scan, she knew if she'd need surgery, chemo, radiotherapy, how long it would be, what her estimated survival was. I don't think they discussed it like a group project, but I suppose she couldn't stop herself from listening to her own internal monologue since it was her own field. I remember her saying she'd found it, in hindsight, an incredible learning opportunity regarding how to interact with patients, and that she thought about it a lot. It depends on what I'm going in for. As a background, I'm an oncologist, so I've trained in internal medicine before. For most internal medicine type stuff, I don't bother going in unless I need something that I can't easily get for myself, for instance labs or images. For specialty stuff I wasn't trained in, I go in and try to give them the best history I can, but let them do their own thing. I don't get involved in the management. I'll let the doctor seeing me lead that, unless they missed something huge, and I would just double check. The main difference is I can present the whole history and relevant info in about 30 seconds flat, and the doctor with that info can just give me the management plan in about the same time. Fastest consultations ever. Very methodical. Doctor here, neurologist. I'm not good at going to the doctor. I don't go often. But when I do, I usually just STFU. Especially if it's a field of medicine I have no idea about, like say, DUM. That being said, the doctor usually knows I'm a physician as well, and so the language terms to be more technical. I also find that we practice less offensively with each other. Since we can be more open, we could do ABC tests, but honestly what you probably have is X, so take this, and if it doesn't get better then we can do ABC. Just wanted to say thank you for one of the more original AskReddit questions I've seen in quite a while. Really interesting subject. My mom's a GP, and she usually just self-diagnoses most of the time, but will sometimes get a second opinion. She doesn't really go to another doctor, just calls them to ask about stuff. Her contacts are filled with all kinds of doctors. It's like a secret underground community. For stuff like getting ultrasounds etc. Then yes, they do discuss stuff like it's a group project. I hope you get some doctors in here to give personal answers. Paul Kalanithi did address this a bit in his book, When Breath Becomes Air. At first in his cancer treatment he was very involved in the decision making, and the way he described the conversation with his oncologist was more like a collaboration. Later, she reminded him that he didn't have to participate in the decision making, and that he could just let her be the doctor and focus on himself. He ended up taking her up on this offer. So even between the same patient and doctor, the relationship varied. I'm an doctor, and sometimes I have other doctors as patients. For the most part they are pretty good patients, because they can give a good description of their symptoms in a way that's useful to me. They usually ask good questions, and are well equipped to have an informed discussion about their diagnosis and treatment. Sometimes it's hard for me to dial back my patient talk where I simplify medical terms for lay people. Sometimes it's challenging if their area of expertise is totally unrelated to the issue at hand and they don't recognize their limited understanding. The worst patients are those who have just a little medical knowledge and think they know everything. Some version of, my aunt is a nurse, and she said I need a whole body MRI for this runny nose. As far as self-diagnosing, I usually deal with my own minor medical issues. If I noticed signs of something more serious, I would go to someone else. Doctor here, family medicine. I self-diagnose most things, but for my 1-year-old daughter I decided a while ago that I don't want to do that for her. So her pediatrician doesn't know I'm a doctor. I never told her. I want her to treat me like any other parent and explain everything to me like I'm 5 years old. I'm afraid of being too nonchalant with my daughter's health, that I'll miss something, or the doctor assuming I know more than I really do. It's actually a strategy I've adopted, since on myself, if I go to a doctor, say a gynecologist, for a routine checkup, I sometimes just don't say what I do, so I can legitimately ask dumb questions about things that I should really know, or so that the other doctor won't leave out important info that they assume I know for fear of insulting me. On the other hand, my regular doctors do know, such as the gynecologist who saw me through my pregnancies, and that enables more complex and nuanced discussions about health decisions, as in debating questions and giving me options that he wouldn't necessarily do with itty patients. BC he can be sure I understand the medical pros and cons well once I'm given a basic explanation. Doctor here, it is a bit dependent on the field of medicine involved. For example, I don't know much about neurological issues, so if I went to see a neurologist I certainly wouldn't be chipping in. For more generic conditions I have previously offered my thoughts to my doctor about what it could be. Ultimately I still go to the doctor, as they can prescribe drugs, order tests for me. That would be difficult, questionable for me to do myself. Doctor here. In general, we are not good about going to the doctor. For me it's physicals about half as often as recommended, and that time I had strep a year and a half ago that didn't resolve with whatever antibiotics I had in my medicine cabinet. When we do go in, it is like a group project. We usually hash things out together, but ultimately I'm going to defer to someone with more expertise than me in that area, who can make an objective decision. I was sat in a consultation between two doctors, with one needing an ultrasound. They knew each other through work already, so it was very friendly and casual between the both of them. The patient's doctor trying to figure out what was going on the ultrasound screen, and the doctor was teaching him the bits he didn't know. The pace and density of the conversations is different, I'm sure. I'm an emergency physician who has over time treated various physicians in my community, including internists, surgeons, radiation oncologists, some from my hospital and some not. Keep in mind that each specialty is quite different from the others. The radonc, for example, thinks and speaks differently than the orthosurgeon, and I felt like my treatment of each of them was really quite similar to treating a professor of engineering. Academically minded people tend to ask lots of questions and research stuff while you're out of the room, as compared to populations that request a more paternalistic bent and just want you to tell them what to do so they can get on with their day. I'm careful to credit that the number of hours that went into my family physician's training are the same as mine, simply a different topic. She knows tons of stuff about management and screening for chronic disease that I don't, and I know how to intubate people, manage a bad LSD trip, or use a jar of bubbles to distinguish between kids that are scared and kids that are head injured.